Hello, welcome back to another episode of McKill's Deck Chronicles. My name is Kenny Williamson, and I will be walking you through the second part of White Alice. So what we're going to talk about today is White Alice Part 2, Are Satellites Real? Now, if you watched Part 1, I tried to cover that thing pretty thoroughly, and I noticed that I did repeat myself a lot, which is a bad habit of mine. So I'm going to try not to do that as much this time. And also I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit shorter than the last one. Okay? But I do want to do a little short recap. Okay? And so basically, if we do a little short recap, we were talking about the White Alice system. Okay, it's a communication system. It was installed in Alaska. There was roughly 80 locations. And these satellite dishes, well, they weren't satellite dishes. They were dishes, okay? Because at this time that these were implemented, there was no such thing as satellites. Okay, so these devices looked like satellite dishes, behaved like satellite dishes, but were not satellite dishes by the standard description, okay? So these devices bounced signals off of what the government says is the troposphere. Okay, now I have another layer here. I can show you the layers again. This is the layers of the atmosphere according to our government. Okay, so we have a troposphere, which is where the birds fly and the airplanes fly. We have a stratosphere. We have a mesosphere. We have a thermosphere. We have an exosphere. Now, this is according to our current scientists in 2025. Now, do I believe that we have these layers? I do not. I do not believe these layers exist. However, even if you had these layers, obviously you can see there's a shaded area here, like each one's a different color, and you can see a line, right? But in reality, there is nothing there as far as a line, a boundary. It just passes from one to the next, according to our scientists. And eventually you go into the exosphere, and it goes from there into just outer space. Somewhere through there is just the blackness of space, a vacuum. I guess the exosphere isn't a vacuum, according to them. Now, according to modern day thermodynamics, which we have laws of thermodynamics, you cannot have a pressure next to a vacuum. You cannot have a high pressure next to a low pressure. They immediately converge. So if you take a pressurized anything, if you take, let's say, a helium balloon, you put helium in it and it has pressurized helium and it's forced the rubber balloon out. If you pop the balloon, the helium immediately goes out. It doesn't just hang out in a ball shaped like a balloon. In other words, gases have to have a container. Okay? That's why you can't go to, the place to get some propane filled up for your propane grill. You can't run over here to Walmart to refill your propane grill and say, I don't need a tank, sir. Just give me 10 pounds of propane here in the air, because, it can contain itself. And then when I take this imaginary container full of propane, to my grill, I can just stick a tube just in the air, see? And I can just suck the propane out of the imaginary container. I don't need a container, see, because my propane doesn't observe the laws of thermodynamics. Okay, that would be ridiculous, right? That would be absolutely ludicrous if I tried that. So, but again, like I said, now these rules, I've said this before, all of these rules that apply to us here on Earth, none of those rules apply to NASA in space. So, if you could get to space like NASA does, see, that's the beautiful thing about it, is none of these rules apply to you. You can do anything you want. Vacuum doesn't affect you. You can have high pressure, like the Earth's atmosphere, right next to a deep vacuum. And, the atmosphere, the high pressure does not seek low pressure like it does here on Earth. So you can do and have anything you want in outer space. Okay, just like these satellites we're going to talk about today. We have satellites supposedly in the exosphere. Thousands of them. And the exosphere, according to my research on this, and it says it on that paper there, but you can do this research yourself. This is not anything I made up, because I'm a wild conspiracy theorist. I mean, you can Google this. We're talking about a temperature of, let's see, and I'm going to use Fahrenheit here because I like Fahrenheit, but 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit through 4,532 degrees Fahrenheit. So 22 to 45 for easy math. That's the temperature. So if we took an average and said, okay, 3,000 maybe, 3,000 something is the average temperature in the exosphere, according to our government. Okay, not to me, according to the government. And so we've got satellites flying all over the place up there, according to them, that are made out of aluminum. Okay, well, here on Earth, you see, aluminum melts at about 1,200 degrees. It turns into a liquid. So, again, what applies to me does not apply to thee, okay? If you're NASA, your aluminum can float around in 4,500 degrees, doesn't melt. You heat it up to 4,500 degrees here, it would probably not only melt, it would probably evaporate. It would be just like, poof. I mean, it would be like really, really hot, really, really runny. But not if you're NASA. NASA can do anything they want. Now, if you don't believe them, just ask them. They'll tell you. That's going to come at a cost, a very high cost. But anyway, so we have our White Alice system. And according to all the documentation you can find on it, it became completely, totally useless and irrelevant and obsolete because we came out with satellites. And because we came out with satellites and we put satellites in outer space, we no longer need White Alice style communication. Now, in the first episode, I was calling it tropospheric scattering, which is what they called it. But I have since found the Army is still using this stuff, okay? So we're going to get to that in a second. But they're just calling it troposcatter. So I'm going to use that term because it's a lot easier to say, especially for me. So, troposcatter. So these devices used something called troposcatter, which they claim they are shooting a signal up. There's nothing up here but air, and somehow it's coming back down in a certain location, and it's very consistent. It's not like you do it one day and it pops down over here. You do it a different day because there's a thunderstorm. Because one of the things you'll find out as you read this stuff is they claim how this can work is it bounces off moisture in the atmosphere. Okay? So that's fine and dandy, let's say. But see, the only problem with that is the moisture is constantly changing. You have days that are dry, you have days that are wet, and especially in Alaska, you've got days it's snowing, and then days it's raining, and days it's sleeting, and days it's fog. So your moisture content is changing and moving around. And so if you're relying on your signal solely to bounce off of moisture that's in the atmosphere, well, obviously, when the moisture's heavy, you're going to have a different result than you are if the moisture is not heavy. So, but the problem with that is that these devices, they had a fixed location here and a fixed location here. And these things are, like I said, they're huge steel antennae, if you will, that look like satellite dishes mounted in concrete. and they don't move. But yet this signal goes from point A to point B and bounces off of nothing, okay, something, and it does it for 20 years. 20 years that they used it, even longer, because they, after the military got done with it in 20 years, they leased it to RCA, and then RCA was still using this thing up into the 80s that we know of. Now, having said that, this is supposedly all working, again, without the use of any type of satellite. Satellites don't exist back then. So now we fast forward to current day. Okay, so current day, according to the government, we have thousands of satellites floating around in outer space. Now, again, and not just to say government, but let's just say, for a civilian type deal, we have something like, okay, let me just show you again. That was the White Alice. There they are. They're huge. There's a building in the center. It looks like a long building. It's not a tall building, but it is a full-size building. So, these things are huge. And this is a satellite uplink station from Dish Network. This particular one, like I said, is in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And supposedly they have 14 satellites in outer space. Okay? They own some of them and they lease some of them. Okay? That's what they claim. Now, when you read the article on this particular installation, it also says that the government's very interested in this installation, and they had recently, upon the writing of this, got a huge grant. It was like a $6 million or $15 million grant from the government, to help them do whatever they're doing there. So that sounds logical, right? You've got Dish Network. They sell Dish TV to people watching TV at their homes, probably right now. They're binge watching Netflix as we speak. They're probably watching the new Reacher. They're watching all of the newest Hollywood movies. Hollywood. Oops, whatever. So they're watching all the good guys out there from Hollywood that worship Satan. We're watching all them. We're streaming it. So it's working because we got our dish and it's pointed up and it goes back down to this thing like in Cheyenne here. Now, is it bouncing off a satellite in outer space? Like I said, I don't believe it. I believe that it's bouncing off of the firmament. I believe the firmament, according to the Bible, was there in the beginning. It's in Genesis 1. If you don't believe me, and you don't even have, I'm a King James guy, you don't even have to read a King James, okay? You can pick up probably an NIV and anything and start at Genesis 1:1, and by the time you get to verse or chapter 6 in that area, it's probably have mentioned the firmament about 10 times. Quite a few times, okay? So the firmament, according to the Holy Bible, exists. And then you can fast forward up to Psalms, and King David wrote Psalms, and the firmament is mentioned again twice that I know of as far as the firmament goes. And, he refers to it as God's handiwork. So it's mentioned again way up in the Bible. Okay, so let's pretend that the firmament is there just for a moment. So even if you don't believe anything that I'm telling you, okay, just for a second, let's pretend that everything you've been told from birth is a lie. Okay? Let's pretend that the Bible is true. Okay? If that's the case, then Satan has been running the show since the beginning. Everything he says is a lie because the Bible says he's a liar and he's the father of lies. Okay? He's the first liar. So, and like I've said before, you have to understand, if you were to say, why would they do this? Well, you have to understand what the Bible says and what Satan says is completely opposite. So if the Bible says there's a firmament, Satan will say there is no firmament. If the Bible says that the earth is flat and stationary and non-moving, then Satan will tell you, no, it's not. It's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And then it's spinning around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. And didn't you know that the sun is moving through like a corkscrew, when everything's going through outer space at 490,000 miles an hour? Now, you can't see any of this, can't prove any of it, can't feel it, but trust me, don't believe anything what you read in the Bible, believe what man says. And so I know, and I understand, you're going to have people that say, listen, the guys in the Bible thought that was true, but now we have science, and so science proved otherwise. Well, or you could say, we had the truth in the Bible, and now we have man's lies trying to tell you that the Bible's not true. That's what I say. But anyway, I digress on that. Let's go back to satellites. So let's say you believe it. You believe satellites are in space. Okay. And, why do we need them? That's another good question. I don't understand. I wish somebody could explain that to me in simple English, because let's back up for a second. We know we have White Alice in operation for probably 30 years. They claim, that they had to tear a bunch of the sites down because of the stuff it was made out of. I don't know if that's true or not. And they said it went obsolete. And, the technology probably did go obsolete. They don't need a dish that big anymore to do the work. Now we can do it with a little bitty dish on the side of the house. So, yeah, we probably don't need it. So tear it down. We don't need those diesel engines out there running. I mean, that's what was powering these things, was diesel engines, generators. So tear it down and put a regular one up that you can, run off something little. I get that. But the one of the matter is they're still doing it. They just upgraded their equipment. So I relate that to the same thing as the internet, okay? I'm old enough to know that when internet first came out, you had to have a dial-up modem, okay? And I'm sure most of you know what that is. Some maybe don't. So you get on your computer and you have to have a telephone line, and you click you want to connect to the internet, and you literally hear it dialing, going beep, 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 and it dials, and it finally makes a bunch of noises like a fax machine, kind of, and finally connects and says, oh, you're connected. Okay, well, we now have, then, we probably went up to something else, cable, DSL. For a while, I even had satellite internet, because where I lived at the time, you could not get cable or DSL or anything else. And now we have fiber optic, internet. And the point of the matter is we still have internet. Okay. The technology has changed and got better and better and faster and faster and faster. So obviously, if I pulled out an old computer now here that had a modem in it, I cannot connect to the internet with it, I'm sure. There are no dial-up providers probably anymore. So I would have to, it would be a piece of junk. So I could throw it in the trash and get one that's got a new fiber optic something on it and probably connect right to it, or Wi-Fi or whatever. So the point of the matter is the internet didn't go away. It's getting better, but we're still using the same thing. It's the same technology. It's the same principle. I'm still sitting in front of a computer connected to the internet. No matter if it's by a dial-up or a cable or whatever it's connected to, it's still the same thing. Same thing as White Alice. White Alice's technology may have been junk, so we've got faster computers and faster ways and better bandwidth, and we can put a whole bunch of information and send it a whole lot faster. But it still is being sent, bounced off of something, and received. That hasn't changed. The only thing they're claiming is there's satellites in its place. Now, I have an article here. Okay, this is from the Aberdeen Proving Ground. Okay, I'm sure you can look this up. It was in July of 2013. Okay. And I'll just read it to you here. It says, the U.S. Army researchers are reaching out to industry for fresh ideas on troposcatter. Remember that? That's what White Alice used. Okay. troposcatter technologies for fixed site and on-the-move long-range military communications as an alternative to satellite communications, which they call SATCOM. So SATCOM is satellite communications, supposedly a satellite in outer space. The military in 2013 is wanting better equipment for troposcatter. The same thing that White Alice was, or is. I mean, they probably never shut the thing down. They probably just renamed it, would be my guess. They probably, junked the old equipment and they have new equipment in its place. They just didn't bother to mention any of that. Okay. So, guess what troposcatter is? I mean, they're telling this to you as if you've never heard of it before. Like it's something new, and this is new technology. No, it's not. This is antique junk by most people's standards. According to the government, it's no good. You need SATCOM. Why would you want this? But for some reason in 2013, they're trying to renew it again and get it all back. Okay, think about that for a second. So troposcatter communications transmits and receives microwave signals at beyond line of sight distances as far as 200 miles or further without SATCOM by bouncing radio signals off of layers of the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, layers of the Earth's atmosphere. Layers that you can't see. Layers that nobody has ever seen. There are no layers you can see. So how we're bouncing stuff off of layers nobody can see, I don't know. We're not. Well, they're bouncing it all right. They're bouncing it right off of the firmament. Okay, now they're never going to admit that. And I know why, I think. At least I have a good theory. Okay. So anyway, troposcatter communications scatters radio waves as they pass through upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere, where most of the planet's water vapor resides, blah, blah, blah. And they've got this big testing ground, and they're wanting all this stuff tested, and they're asking that if any big companies know anything about it, yada, 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 tells you all about it. It goes on to say military forces have been using troposcatter communications in various forms, White Alice being one of those forms, okay, since the 60s. And they're transmitting voice and data, it says, without the use of satellites. Wow. Let's see. Why is that, I wonder? Well, it doesn't really say why. But it does say that one of the best-known U.S. military troposcatter communications was called Tactical Communication Program, or TRITAC, Strategic Command. And it says they abandoned this particular one in 2002. So, excuse me, by the way. In other words, they're using this thing and have been using it. They were using it in the 50s. They called it White Alice. They were using it again. They call it TRITAC. They're probably calling it all kinds of different names. And up in here in 2013, they're wanting to renew it and get some even more out there. Now, if SATCOM, satellite communications, are so wonderfully good, why would you go away from it? If you can connect to a satellite in outer space any old place you want at any old time, why would you need anything else? And see, that's one of the good questions. Like when you sail out into the ocean, they've got buoys out there in the ocean with these towers on them for signaling. Well, why do we need buoys out in the middle of the ocean for ship navigation if we have satellites? Why do we need anything like that with all these satellites in outer space? Did you know that 99% of all communication on this earth is done with ground-based communication? All of our communication overseas and everything is done with undersea cables. All of it. You can Google that and find it all out. So if 99% of all of Earth's communications is done with cables and undersea cables, what exactly are these satellites doing? That's my question. Well, apparently you can stream movies from satellites. I mean, satellite car radio. Wow. I mean, these things are important. Apparently they're not important or good enough that the military relies on them because they're just shooting beams up and bouncing them back down. They don't even need a satellite. Nobody does. You get that? They're doing it off of the firmament, and they're pretending they have satellites. Now, here's why I think they do that. Okay? Oh, and by the way, I have another, this is a picture of the, let's see, what is this a picture of? This is a picture of one of the thing where they're claiming they've got the transmitter, they've got a receiver, and you see how it just goes up and comes back down? It's bouncing off nothing, which I've said before. They are literally claiming the signals bounce off nothing. We know that's not happening. It's bouncing off something. It's the firmament, okay? And this right here is a picture of a couple of the satellites. The one on the right is a Dish Network satellite, and I think it's called EchoStar 15. I think that's the one that it is, supposedly. And this is another one. I can't remember which one it is. You see its little satellite dishes, and, of course, you can see it looks like a cartoon, obviously. It's obviously fake and CGI or a painted picture. So is the space behind it, and so is the fake Earth underneath. And the one on the right, the same thing. It's a fake composited CGI picture, as fake as it gets. And the reason for that is they don't have any pictures of any satellites in outer space. Well, I know it's because they're not there, but they claim you just can't take a picture of a satellite in outer space. What, are you crazy? We can't do that. We can't provide a stitch of proof that's not CGI. But we're NASA. We don't have to. We don't have to. So, real quick, we get back to, let's see, what is it? Dish Network's uplink site. Okay. This one, like I said, is in Cheyenne, Wyoming. They claim they have enough wire there to encircle the Earth 6 times. So, I'm sure that's a lie, but whatever. I read that the government, like I said, gave them a huge grant. Okay, so I want you to think about this for a second. You have a business. The government's got their hands in it. We all know what the government, get onto X anywhere and look up this Department of Government Efficiency. Even without that, anybody that's been around any length of time knows that the government is lying and cheating and stealing all your money. Everybody knows that. That's how we can have a politician get in that's in debt, owes $200,000. And by the time they're a politician for a couple of years, they've got $20 million in the bank and their salary is only $150,000. Somehow they become multimillionaires about 10 times over in just a couple of years. So the only way you can do that is if you're getting money, a kickback from something, because their salary doesn't pay it and they have no other form of income. There is no income listed. So they have to be stealing it or getting kickbacks from something. So I believe this satellite deal is just one example of that. Okay? So picture this. You've got your Dish Network out there. Okay? Yes, you have your infrastructure. You have your discs on the ground, your satellite dishes. Okay? And you are beaming a signal up. It's hitting the firmament. Okay, and you're beaming it back down to somebody that has a satellite dish on their house. Okay, well, you do own all your equipment there on Earth. Okay, all your dishes, all the equipment, all the movies, whatever, however that works. That takes money. I understand that. And then you've got to have the dish on somebody's house. You've got to have the technician to install it. You've got to have the box to decrypt it so anybody just can't steal it out of the air. I understand that. So it is a legitimate business. They're selling you movies, you're watching your movies. I understand that. But we have one thing that is, here's where the kickbacks come in. Here's where the scam comes in. Well, they're claiming they're doing this with a satellite in outer space. Okay, they're not, if they said, hey, we're just bouncing it off the firmament and it's free, well, you might want your bill to go down, see? Because, Anybody can do that, right? But not anybody can put a satellite in outer space. Not everybody can have a SATCOM going on, right? So again, I looked up some stuff from Dish Network on their sites, and I found out that according to them, designing and building a satellite to go into outer space to do whatever they do up there, supposedly, send and receive, just one satellite, cost between $200 million and $400 million to design it and build it. So now, once we have that thing designed and built, it takes another between $10 million and $400 million for one rocket launch, okay, to get that thing into outer space. Yeah. So if you add that up, of course you add up the high numbers, $800 million for one satellite in outer space. And they've got 14 of them. 14. That's a lot of money. Now, if you're running a business and you make a lot of money, a lot of profit, and you have tax write-offs like that, oh, boy, hey, you know what? We've got a satellite that failed. We need to put another one up. Well, that's another $800 million. And it disappears. The money disappears. But is there really a satellite in outer space? I guess you just have to trust them, don't you? Because you're never going to see it. And do you think the government is going to come in there and say, that's fake, you're scamming us? Well, no, they're in on it. They claim they've got them. Not only that, they're giving grants to these people. For what? I don't know. So if you are taking in all this money from all these customers, the government is giving you all this money, and you claim you need all this money to support all of these satellites in outer space, and then come to find out you don't have any satellites in outer space because really you're just bouncing the signal off of the firmament, which you're calling it, troposcatter, which is what the military calls it. And they've got good results with it, so I don't know why you wouldn't. Again, they were using troposcatter for White Alice, for between 20 and 30 years, and these things were working flawlessly. The bouncing off isn't what failed. They just needed to upgrade the technology. That's all. And they did, and they're still using it. So military wants to get away from SATCOM. Why do you need it if you can do the same exact thing without a satellite? Well, maybe you don't have a satellite to begin with. So can you imagine the amount of money and stuff you could write off if you claim you have 14 satellites in outer space costing that kind of money? And in reality, you're just bouncing the signal? Even if you don't believe it's bouncing off of the firmament because you don't believe in it. Well, why wouldn't you just bounce it off the troposphere like the military's doing it? Can you believe that? I mean, the military believes it. They're doing it. I mean, you can look up these stories yourself. They're all online. Just Google it. Google the military and troposcattering or any of that. I mean, it's literally all right there. So even if you don't believe in the firmament, why not just use this same guaranteed to work, and you wouldn't need the satellites in outer space? You see, it's a large, gigantic money laundering system is what it is. It's the same as NASA. Okay, launder money. We have satellites in outer space we have to maintain, so keep giving us money. Now, we're never going to produce anything but crappy CGI. Now, we'll do that. And we'll show you some astronauts up in the space station, all with wires. Astronauts hanging from wires, And now we astronauts stranded in space, and come on. Okay, this stuff is filmed in a Hollywood basement. Is exactly where it's filmed in Hollywood, in a studio, maybe not in Hollywood, but it's somewhere in a studio right here on Earth. You know, and I'm a sci-fi guy. I've always liked Star Trek. You know, I like a lot of space movies. I've always liked space movies. But it's not real. It's science fiction. They claim it to be science fiction. Okay? And I've got a friend, and, you know, he really likes Interstellar, the movie Interstellar, if you've ever seen it. And I have seen it. I didn't really like the movie that much, but I really thought the robot was cool. TARS, you know, and the way it moves around. I thought it was a cool robot, okay? You know, and he's really, and of course he's big into space, you know, because he likes space movies. And, you know, and like I told him, I said, you understand that Interstellar was filmed right here on Earth. It's not real. They didn't really go into a black hole, okay? They're not really doing this stuff. It's fake, and it looks real when you watch it. You know, and they sail down to a planet that's got water, and it's got all these huge... It's fake. You can see where they're filming it on a studio. It's fake. Okay? I don't know how many times I can say that. Most of 99% of everything that they tell you today, especially our government, and what you see on the news and what you see from these space agencies, is fake. They had some better graphics in some of the movies than what NASA puts out, you know, and SpaceX. They, you know, and I mean, some of the stuff is so ridiculously cheesy looking. Okay, I've seen better stuff 10, 15 years ago in cheesy movies. And they literally, you know, they stick somebody up there, a talking head, you know, like Musk, and he literally makes a statement. You know, the faker it looks means it's real. He goes, you know it's real because it looks so fake. Really? That's how you know it's real, because it looks fake. I mean, if that's your logic, if that's what you go by, I mean, I could show you some fake stuff around here. Now you're going to believe it's real because it looks fake. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, how about if it's real, it looks real, and if it's fake, it looks fake? How about that? Doesn't that sound a little more logical? But anyway, even if you don't agree with any of that, and like I said earlier, NASA can do whatever they want. Think about the temperatures up there. You know, this place tells us the temperature up there, like I said, is 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. We've got satellites. It really doesn't matter what it's made out of, because we don't have anything on Earth that can handle that temperature that they can put in space, supposedly. Okay. Aluminum melts at 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Titanium melts at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, titanium's heavy, so they're not, you know, they don't claim that they're made out of titanium unless very few parts of them are. But even if it melts at 3,000, all the other components together, none of them can withstand it. You know, steel only melts at around 1,300 degrees. Okay, gold melts at 1,900 degrees. Lead only melts at 621 degrees. Magnesium melts at 1,200 degrees. So all these components that we have here on Earth melt way below 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. But again, because NASA assembles these things and sticks them in outer space, or I guess Dish Network, probably whoever's putting these things in space, you know, hey, you can build them out of, I guess you could build them out of paper mache. You know, you could build them out of paper if NASA does it and stick it up in outer space, and it'll work just fine. For 20 years. They claim the lifespan of these things is 20 years. So I guess that's the only drawback, is that they can't do a write-off but once about every 15 or 20 years, unless they need to upgrade. So they can't, so every year they can't, you know, I guess if they started 15 years ago, they could do one a year. They could say, well, you know, this year we had one, the next year we had two, and then when they get to 15 years, on the 16th year, they can say, oh, that number one satellite, well, it junked out on us, so another $800 million on that one. And next year, now we've got back into the, you see, we bought one, so it cost us $800 million a year for 15 years. And then when we got to the end of 15 years, now they're starting to junk out, so now we've got to replace them. So in other words, once you get started, it's, per satellite, 800 million a year from now on as a tax write-off. It looks to me like. So yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Huge giant tax write-offs for equipment that nobody's ever seen and never will see. Because they say once they quit working, they don't just necessarily come back down. It says they move them up even higher into a dead type orbit. And so there's a bunch of them up there floating around because it leaves space for some down here. So they just move them up. So in other words, you never see them. They're gone. So are they there or are they not there? You be the judge. Okay. I personally don't believe it. I think that it's fake. So, but anyway, I'll talk some more in the future. I'm going to need to end this thing. It's already 40 minutes long. I'll talk some more about the technology they're using to communicate between continents, and it's all cables, all of it. Undersea cables, everywhere cables. Nothing like they claim. All of our internet right now is working through cables, not through satellites. No way, not happening. So, if you liked it, hey, if you like this thing, please share it. Tell your friends. Come on over to the website. If you would like to contact me, you can, my website, one of my websites is thisflatbro.com. Got a contact information at the bottom. Contact me there. I've got these videos on Patreon, Rumble, YouTube, and here. And you can also go to my other website, truthseekersministry.org or kennywilliamson.com or itsflatbro.com. So if you have any questions, anything like that, please feel free to go check it out. If you like this, please share it. And as always, thanks for listening, and God bless you.